Why do we need the nutrients? Suppose we eat food to get the nutrients from the food, right? But why do we need the nutrients? The answer is, with the nutrients, we will be able to, inside those nutrients, there is energy that we need. We need that energy to carry on our daily life activities, for our survival, to stay alive. We need energy. That energy we get from the nutrients, and the nutrients we get from the foods. Okay. Now, we eat the food through our mouth, and the food is broken down and absorbed in the abdomen, right? So, how the food goes or reaches to each cell of our body, to every part of our body from the abdomen. This is the blood that carries the nutrients that is absorbed in the abdomen. So from the abdomen to all the parts of our body, the blood carries the nutrients. Similarly, the oxygen that we breathe in, that is also carried by blood. Not only the oxygen, the carbon dioxide that is produced in our body, that is also very toxic product, and it is a waste product. So we must eliminate it. This is why we give out or exhale the carbon dioxide. So who carries the carbon dioxide? That is also the blood. So blood is of red color. Why the blood is of red color? Because blood contains hemoglobin. Blood contains RBC or red blood cells. Red blood cells contain hemoglobin. Hemoglobin contains iron. So iron, the natural color of iron is red. So as hemoglobin is rich in red, so hemoglobin becomes red. And as red blood cell is made up of hemoglobin, so red blood cell or RBC also becomes red. And as in blood, there is red blood cell in maximum number. So among all these blood cells, the red blood cell is present in maximum number. So automatically the blood becomes red. Is it clear?
Yes.
Why the blood is red?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
color? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Making what makes the blood thicker, as the blood actually, if there is nothing dissolved in the blood is not that much thicker. But the more nutrients and waste materials or gases will be dissolved in the blood, the more thicker the blood will be. These make the blood thick. Liquid called plasma makes up about half of the content of blood. Plasma containing proteins that help blood to clot, transport substances. This plasma helps the blood to transport the substances through the blood and to perform some other functions. Like that is not mentioned here. Blood also helps us to maintain our body pH, to maintain our body temperature. So plasma also helps in these functions. Blood plasma also contains glucose and other dissolved nutrients. About half of the blood volume is composed of blood cells. There are 3 types of blood cells. So half of the blood is made up of plasma and another half of the blood that is made up of blood cells. Plasma is the matrix. The plasma carries these blood cells. As plasma is liquid by nature, so plasma carries these blood cells as well. The 3 types of blood cells are RBC or red blood cell, white blood cells or WBC, and platelets. The main function of red blood cell or RBC is to carry the oxygen, okay? Because the red blood cell contains hemoglobin. And here you can see it is written. The red blood cell contains hemoglobin, which is rich in iron content. This is why hemoglobin is also red in color. And this hemoglobin binds with oxygen and it makes oxyhemoglobin. Now in this form, oxyhemoglobin that is dissolved in blood, in this form oxygen is carried in blood and then it is taken to all the parts of our body where it is needed. So main function of red blood cell is to carry the oxygen. And how much red blood cell do we have? We have, how long the red blood cells live? The red blood cells live for about 120 days after it has been produced. That means in each 120 day, new red blood cells are produced in our body because the older ones will die in 120 days. Now, where these red blood cells will produce? They will be produced inside the bone marrow. So you know what is bone marrow? You know what is bone marrow?
Yes, ma'am. That lives inside our bones.
Bones also, there actually the bones are hollow from inside. Now in that hollow portion there is one type of.
Ma'am, can I say?
Okay, tell it.
Ma'am, the white color pigment present inside the bones.
Yes, inside the bones, that pigment, or we can also, it is of semi-liquid structure or consistency. That part, so at the center of the bones, the bone marrow is present there, and in this bone marrow, red blood cells are produced. Now, once a red blood cell is produced, how long it will live? It will live for 120 days. That means after 120 days, again new red blood cells will be produced by the bone marrow. Next is white blood cell. So why it is called white blood cell? Because you can see the color seems white. Why? Because white blood cells do not contain the hemoglobin. Only because red blood cells contain hemoglobin, they appear red. But white blood cells, they do not contain hemoglobin. So they do not appear red. This is why we call them white blood cells. Now, as you have seen in red blood cells, the main function is to carry the oxygen. The main function of white blood cell is to fight against pathogens. Okay, there are two types of white blood cells. One is called macrophage and another is called lymphocyte. So when any pathogen, suppose bacteria, virus, any pathogen, any germ that will harm our body, they enter our body. So the type of white blood cell called macrophage, they directly kill the germ or pathogen. Whereas another type of white blood cell called lymphocyte, they will create antibodies. Okay, you know what is antibody? Antibodies are vital parts of our immune system. They help us to inactivate the pathogens, the antigens that the pathogens have. So we can say that white blood cells play an important role in our immunity. So let's see what is written here. White blood cells are slightly larger. They are slightly larger than red blood cells. And the main function of white blood cell is to defend the body against infections. What I've just told you. Hence, these cells increase in number when a person suffers from any kind of illness. So if any kind, you are infected by any organism, any pathogen, or infections are there in our body, we are suffering from any kind of disease, then the number of white blood cell becomes more and more. It gets increased. Okay. So the number of red blood cells remains constant in most of the cases. Due to infection, it may reduce. The number of red blood cells may reduce, but the number of white blood cells will increase. Why? Because the white blood cells give us the protection against the infections. They show amoeba-like movement that help to reach the site of infection through the walls of the blood vessel. So they can go through the blood vessels and they can reach. Suppose any pathogen has entered our body, and whenever the signal will reach the white blood cell, it will directly reach at the site of infection. And when it will reach at the site of infection, it will the macrophages, they will directly go and engulf the pathogen, just like amoeba. And the lymphocytes will produce the antibody. This is how they will react. They will affect our immune system when we get any kind of infection. The third type of blood cells are platelets. Platelets are smaller than red blood cells in our body. So that means they are also smaller than the white blood cells. White blood cells are larger than red blood cells, and red blood cells are larger than platelets. Okay, this is how we can compare the size. The platelets help the blood to clot whenever there is any wound on the body. These block the flow of blood and prevent blood loss. Okay. So platelets help in the production of fibrinogen. Okay, you don't need to read in that details. So one kind of fiber, they are secreted by the cells when we get any cut or we get the injury. Okay, so those fibers make a net-like structure there. So that net-like structure, what happens? If this is the net-like structure, it's like this. So when the platelets will come inside, they will get trapped into this net-like structure, right? So the fibrinogens, what are the fibers that are secreted by the cells of the part that is the injured part? If you have any cut or any wound on the skin, the cells of that particular portion, they will secrete that fibrinogen. It will convert into, okay, that fibrinogen is a fiber-like structure. It will create a net-like structure at that place, and the platelets will go there and they will become trapped into those nets. And as the nets inside which the platelets are trapped, they will block the blood, the pathway of the blood in that cut part of your skin. And this is how they stop bleeding. The bleeding will be stopped. And after few hours, the blood will start clotting. And after few days, you will see new skin, a layer of new skin has been produced on that part. So this is how platelets help to clot the blood if you have any kind of wound or cut or injury. Next is the structure of the heart. It is very, very important. You can see here. Let's see what is written in your book. The heart is a fist-sized muscular organ that pumps oxygen-rich blood throughout the body, and it not only pumps the oxygen-rich blood throughout the body, but at the same time it also pumps the carbon dioxide containing blood so that it can reach the lungs, and from the lungs it can be given out to the environment. The inside of the heart is divided into 4 chambers. So there are 4 chambers. How many chambers are there in the structure of a heart? There are 4 chambers like this. Okay. So total as a whole, there are 4 chambers in the heart. So here, this one will be the right side. Okay, this one will be the left side. So this one is will be the right side, and this one will be the left side. The lower chambers of the heart, they are called the ventricles. So this one will be the right ventricle. This one will be the left ventricle. And what are the upper chambers called? Can anyone tell me? Right? Atrium and left? Atrium. Yes. So these are the 4 chambers of a heart. Right atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Now the left side, this one, the left side, it receives the oxygen or oxygenated blood from the lungs. Okay? The left side, that means this side, it receives the oxygenated blood from the lungs, and then it pumps that oxygenated blood to all the parts of our body. And the right side, that means this side, it receives the deoxygenated blood, that means the blood that is rich in carbon dioxide. It receives it from the other parts of our body and it pumps it to the lungs. Up to this, is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now let's see what is written in your book. The 2 lower chambers with thick muscular walls, they are called the ventricles. These chambers help to avoid the mixing up of blood rich in oxygen and that carbon dioxide. Okay, here you see there is a, so as I have told you that this is the right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. Okay, so the left side, it deals with the oxygenated blood, and the right side, it deals with the deoxygenated blood. As the heart, you may see that the heart contains so many tube-like structures. It may happen sometimes the oxygenated blood and deoxygenated blood can get mixed with each other, but they will never mix. Why they will never mix? Because the left side and right side, in between them, there is a barrier. What is it called?
Ma'am, septum.
Septum, yes. So the septum differentiates. It's a thick wall made up of muscles, cardiac muscles, So it separates the right ventricle and atrium to the left ventricle and atrium, so that the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood cannot get mixed. The left auricle is connected to the left ventricle. So atrium and auricle both are same. Okay, don't get confused because the names sound different, but both are same. So that is connected to the left atrium is connected to the left ventricle, and the right atrium is connected to the right ventricle through small openings called valves. So where they are connected to each other, their valves are present like this. The valves look like this. They are just like doors. Okay. And
Ma'am, they help us to blood flowing of blood.
They are separated as bicuspid valve and tricuspid valve. And the most of the valves, they move to one particular direction, either to this side or to this side. But some valves are also there. They can move to both the sides. And the valves are just like doors. See, now the door is, sorry. So the general position of the valve is like this when it is closed. It's exactly like entrance and exit, enter and exit door. So when the blood needs to enter the heart, then the valves will open up the door. Suppose this is the, this is the artery through which the blood will enter, through the artery. So
ma'am, valves help us to, ma'am, valves help from back flowing of blood.
Inside the artery, the valve is present like this. When the blood will enter, the valve will open up, and there will be enough space for the blood to enter. Now, when the heart is completely filled, when the lower chamber of the heart is completely filled with blood, and now no more blood can enter the lower chamber, then the valve present between the atrium and ventricle, they will be closed like this. So if it is closed, the blood is not allowed to flow from atrium to ventricle. And these valves that are present in between atrium and ventricle, they are called atrioventricular valves. They are called atrioventricular valves. So valves are just like doors. They will be closed like this when no blood should enter the lower chamber. The lower chamber is already filled with blood, and no more blood should enter it. Then the ventricles will be closed like this. But when then the valves will be closed like this. But when the oxygenated blood will be pumped out of ventricle, now the ventricle is empty again. So the valve will open up like this. And so it can make the passage for the blood to flow and enter the ventricle. These valves allow the flow of the blood in one direction only, that is from the auricle or from the atrium to the ventricle. So why? Because the blood, suppose we are talking about the oxygenated blood, it should enter from the atrium to the ventricle. And if the blood again goes back to the atrium, then all these valves, all these functions will go in vain. Nothing, no work, we will not get any kind of work. We will not get the oxygenated blood in our cells. So this is why the blood must not go back to the atrium again from where it has entered the ventricle. So to stop this, the valves will open only in one direction, and when the ventricle will be closed, the ventricle will be filled with blood, the valves will be closed. Is it clear up to this? If any doubt is there, you can ask me. Any doubt is there? Did you understand the function of the valves?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So now when the ventricle is finally filled, ventricle means the lower part, that is finally filled with blood, then what happens? The blood muscles will contract to the inward direction. And when it will contract to the inward direction, what will happen? All the bloods that are present in this lower part, that will come out of the heart through these channels. Right? So when it will come out through these channels, as the heart muscle has contracted very fast, so there will be high pressure or force. Due to this high pressure and force, the blood is able to reach even the parts of our body that are away from the heart. See, the brain is very close to heart. The lungs are very close to heart. But our legs, the cells that are present in our legs, the muscles of our legs, they are far away from the heart. For that, heart must pump 24/7 all the time so that the blood can reach the cells present in our toes and fingernails also. So this is why heart must keep on pumping all the time. Now, what is the function? Here you can see, you will have to draw, you will have to practice the picture of heart, okay? Structure of heart, draw and describe the structure of a heart, human heart. This one you will have to practice. Okay, now this is the pulmonary artery. I have told you in the previous class that pulmonary artery is the artery that carries the blood, from which part? Pulmonary artery. Arteries carry oxygenated blood, but pulmonary artery is exception. Pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. So pulmonary artery will carry the blood from which part to which part?
From lungs to
our cells to the lungs. From our cells to the lungs. As it is pulmonary, that means it is connected to the lungs. And as it is artery, pulmonary artery, that means it will carry the deoxygenated blood. Okay? This is the only exception. Only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. It will carry the blood from our cells to the lungs. And here you can see vena cava. Vena cava is the part that connects the heart with the brain. Okay? Superior vena cava is also there. And there are some branches that is not shown in this picture. So vena cava or vena cava, also people call it, we call it vena cava. It is the part that connects the brain and the heart. Okay, so all the blood from the heart, oxygenated blood from the heart will reach the brain through this vena cava. Anything else is there that you have not seen in the descriptive part? Pulmonary vein, similarly, pulmonary vein, as though it is vein, but this is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood, and it carries the oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Okay, so pulmonary vein carries oxygenated blood, pulmonary artery carries deoxygenated blood. Left ventricle, atrium, and auricle, all are present there. Veins from the body. Okay. Now this one, only one part is left here, that is the aorta. This one, this arch. Okay. What is it called? This is called aorta. Now through the aorta, the oxygenated blood will go to all the parts of our body. This is called aorta. There is an arch. You can see arch means U-like structure. So this is called aorta. Here two divisions can be seen, but actually the aorta has 3 divisions. Okay, one is cannot be seen here. Actually, the aorta has 3 main divisions. Okay, is it clear now? The structure of the heart. Next, the function of the heart. What is the function of the heart? You already know. The main function of the heart is to pump the blood to all the parts of our body. And the blood will take up the waste materials from all the parts of our body, and it will take to the heart. Heart will again pump it to the lungs. Through the lungs, the carbon dioxide will go out of our body. The blood is circulated in human body by regular contraction and relaxation of the heart. Contraction means it will contract, it will go to the squeeze, it will be squeezed to the inward direction, and relaxation means it will again return to its original position or original structure. So contraction and relaxation. It is also known as systole and diastole. Okay, so the contraction and relaxation of heart is also known as systole and diastole. When the heart contracts, that means when it squeezes to the inward direction. When the left ventricle contracts, it pumps the oxygenated blood. As I have told you, the left hand side, see the right atrium, left atrium, right ventricle, left ventricle. So this right hand side, it deals with only oxygenated blood, the blood that contains oxygen. And the right hand side, it deals with only deoxygenated blood. That means the blood that contains carbon dioxide. When the left ventricle contracts, left ventricle means which one? This one. Contracts means it squeezes. Okay. When it contracts, it pumps the oxygenated blood to the main artery, which is called aorta. I have shown you that arch, main artery or arch, that is called aorta. It carries the oxygenated blood that has came from the left ventricle. The aorta branches into many arteries. There are three main branches. Okay, it branches into many arteries which supply the oxygenated blood to all the parts of our body. But what happens when the heart relaxes? When the heart relaxes, the deoxygenated blood collected from different parts of our body that enters the right atrium at the same time. The oxygenated blood is received. So you can see that left side and right side, they are doing two opposite works, right? One is taking the oxygenated blood from the lungs and delivering it or pumping it to all the parts of our body. And the right hand side, it is taking the blood from all the parts of our body and it is sending it to the lungs. Both of them are doing their job. Both the parts of the heart, they are doing their job. The function is completely opposite to each other, but they are functioning at the same time. At the same time, oxygen is received and oxygen is discharged to all the parts of our body through blood. And at the same time, carbon dioxide is received from our body and it is sent to the lungs. So, two different types of functions are happening at the same time in the heart. One type of function is happening to the left hand side, another is happening to the right hand side. So, this is why it is also called that we have double circulatory system. So, there are two types of circulatory system, double circulatory system and single circulatory system. Okay. So we have double circulatory system. That means the receiving the oxygen and pumping it to all parts of our body and receiving the carbon dioxide and pumping it to the lungs. Both the works, both the functions are happening together at the same time with only single contraction and relaxation. This is why it is the system that we have, it is called double circulatory system. But fishes have single circulatory system. They can't do the same work at the same time. That receiving the oxygen and emitting the carbon dioxide, they can't do it at the same time. There should, in fish's body, there will be one complete cycle for one particular type of function. At the same time, they cannot function or they cannot perform two different types of function. So this is why we have double circulatory system, whereas fishes have single circulatory system. In the next part, you can see it is written about heartbeat and pulses. This part I will tell you in the next class. So right now, in the next part, we have heartbeat and pulses, excretion, excretory product and excretion. Okay. So this part we will start in the next week. Okay. For now, you mark up to this. I'm giving you 1 minute. You go through this part. It's a very, very important part. If any doubt is there, any question is there in your mind, you can ask me right now. Okay. I'm just giving you 1 minute. After